Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you kindly for stopping by. I'm always grateful. We had a great session with the Central Bank Governor of Kenya, Patrick Njoroge, and those links are up on Rich Wrap-Ups. And I also did an interview with Richard Britton Long on Friday about St. Paul's Property Trust, of which he's the founder. And he's got this great tagline: you can be a landlord in the UK with just £1 million. It was a pleasure catching up with Georgie Durangu. So good to see him in person. I thank him for the interview earlier today. Macro thoughts. This is from June the 3rd, and as a result of the very poor employment numbers out of the US, this was the price action that we saw, and I thank Hunt Sader for that, Eric Hunt Sader. The yield on the Bloomberg Global Developed Sovereign Bond Index dropped to 0.62% at the end of last week, the least in data going back to 2010. Home thoughts. Look at this photograph from David Yarrow. Tigers are magical animals. The chance to take a portrait in a dark water environment was a moment of great fortune. That took me to William Blake, the tiger. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? Political Reflections. Hillary Clinton was named by the Associated Press as the presumptive Democratic nominee based on the delegate count. President Obama may formally endorse Hillary Clinton as early as this week. Sanders is not too happy, and he's insisting he's not ruining Clinton's moment. Well, she's through, and I think she can now turn her guns on Donald Trump, and she proved quite effective with those comments about his foreign policy. Putin devotes oil windfall to guns, not butter. Russian government has lacked the money to continue buying the support of poor and government-dependent Russians by increasing social benefits when it was politically helpful, as it did throughout the Putin years, something it hasn't been doing of late. The funds have been spent on security and defense at unprecedented levels. From January through April, Russia's defense expenditure was 15% higher than for 2015. In constant prices, it has increased 75% compared with 2010, while Russia's economic output only grew 5.4% in the same period. Russia spending 4.6% of its GDP on defense this year, the highest in Putin's entire tenure. I wrote that piece, which was more about the Syrian intervention, on the 5th of October 2015, when I called him a geopolitical grandmaster. But I also said this: what remains interesting is how what is perceived as external pressure can actually create a situation where the people rally behind their leaders. Putin's popularity held rock steady throughout this period. As the stock market and the ruble crashed, the resilience around his domestic popularity seemingly confounds many, and I think he's leveraging that very fact to keep on upping expenditure on the defense front. At least 5, but we now learn 10 fatalities in an Istanbul explosion. This was the targeting of a police bus, and it speaks to the degree of contestation that Erdogan has with the Kurds, with others, and it's difficult to pin down. I'm sure he'll pin it on the Kurds. Euro 113.62, dollar index 93.95, Japanese yen 107.80, Swiss franc 0.9711. The pound has popped 104 bips higher, 145.44. The Aussie 0.7437, India rupee 66.875, South African 111.6182, the Real 348.84, Egyptian pound 887.92, South African rand below 15, 14.9088. I'll put up a 1-year chart of the dollar index because it shows you how important that 93 level is. It has to hold. Sterling, I'll also put up a 3-month chart of that, and you can see how volatility has spiked big. I like the look of these shoes. Galet gives its popular slips a twist. Exchangeable tassels, they look rather fancy. Well, commodity markets entered a bull market overnight, and that's hat tip to David Inglis. Have a look at his chart. It's a 20% rally from the bottom. This is the Bloomberg Commodity Index. Soybeans, oil, and zinc are the ones that are supporting the rally. Have a look at Javier's image. Gold. Let me just have a quick look at that. Last trading at 12.42. That's obviously had a big old rebound from the 12.06, 12.10 area. Oil closed at a 10-month high. Have a look at Javier's chart, and I'm just not sure about this at all. We saw an increase in the rig count on Friday. I think it's more of a big macro move that's driven us up here. We've seen Brent, for example, hit the 50.91 area twice. Obviously, we go through it, we get to 55, but it might be the point of resistance. But let's have a look at it. $51 is key. I think we might pop through it, but can we hold above it? A very strong session yesterday. Emerging markets are like this. The great room of the Reef House, one of the villas available to rent at Oil Nut Bay. Pretty grand. And this one as well, Amanera Playa Grande, Dominican Republic, looked attractive. Sub-Saharan Africa consolidating a political monarchy, says the Africa Report about President Dos Santos' latest move, which is to put his daughter at the top of Sonangol, which is the state oil company. His son is at the top of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Analyst Aslak Ore said being head of the state oil company is next to the presidency, the most powerful position in the country. Dos Santos' son Jose is the head of the country's Sovereign Wealth Fund. The way he's channeling resources and public jobs to Isabel and his other children implies he's planning almost a monarchical succession, passing power from himself to one of his children. South African all share up 6.5% year to date. Dollar rand 14.9088, looking for it to rally a bit more before we sell it again. Egyptian EGX30 is up 9.04% this year. Desperate for funding, Nigeria prepares to face bond investors. The odds are stacked against Nigeria as it looks to raise debt on the international markets for the first time in almost 3 years. Finance Minister Kemi Adeosu is leading a team of officials that will meet bond investors at London's Corinthia Hotel on Tuesday, at a time when Africa's biggest economy is on the verge of a recession. Oil production has fallen to about a 3-decade low, and the budget deficit has swelled to a record. Yields on Nigeria's existing dollar debt are almost twice as high as those for Kazakhstan and Colombia. They will be under immense scrutiny. This is an analyst at RMB Bank saying Nigeria may try to tap for as much as $1 billion, avenue of financing they're in desperate need of. It's going to be a tough week for the finance ministry. Forward contracts still suggest that the Naira will fall 39% to 277 in 3 months and 324 in a year. The black market rate has plummeted to around 355, as the central bank has run out of the foreign currency that companies need to import raw materials and equipment. Without some kind of exchange rate reform, we doubt the market would look favourably upon a Eurobond. The government's unwillingness to adjust is likely to be seen as a major turn-off for many investors, even if the headline debt ratios are low. Something I've been saying for ages. Nigerian all-share down 3.64% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 12.14% this year. Mozambique plans to reorganize or sell 20 state companies. Debt crisis has destabilized government operations, and the country will have to reorganize 20 state-owned companies. You are aware about the increase in our debt, Newsy told businessmen over the weekend. Like it or not, it's destabilizing our normal operations, the functioning of state institutions. Saying that they're going to restructure these companies. It's a restructuring or even reassessment of their existence. They've really gone from hero to zero. My piece over the weekend was how street protests will hurt our 6% growth forecast. I returned to Paul Virilio, which might well be a book that the opposition is studying in his extraordinary book, Speed and Politics, and he said the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine, and itself becomes a motor, machine of attack, in other words, a producer of speed. Kenyan opposition said 5 killed as election protests resume. I think that's been reduced to 2. At least 5 have been shot dead as of now. It could be higher. This is Dennis Onyango. Calls to police spokesman Charles Owino didn't connect. This time the drama was in Kisumu. Have a look at this tweet. Man in the road injured in Kisumu. I wrote in that piece over the weekend that the street is a tinderbox and it has become a major area of political contestation across the continent. New York Times, Jeffrey Gettleman, Kenya's collective another election is coming. By 9 a.m. on Monday, clouds of black smoke blotted out the sky, a mountain of tires burned, roads were blocked, young men poured into the streets of a slum in Nairobi, gleefully carrying huge, jagged pieces of concrete. In Kisumu, a city on Lake Victoria, witnesses said police officers had fired on a crowd. A 5-year-old boy was in critical condition after being shot in the back. For the past several weeks, Kenya's opposition leaders have turned Mondays into protest days. Now they are threatening to hold demonstrations twice and soon 4 times a week. Many Kenyans are shaking their heads with a sense of fatigue and dread, saying, here we go again. I said it's getting very nervy. The economy crashes and burns when we fumble these elections. What's worrying is that this is happening so early that we already have this degree of contestation. The opposition leaders, I didn't say this, Jeffrey said it, but it's the truth. The opposition leaders are aware of this. Part of their leverage is the ability to slow down the economy. And then finally, tension suddenly lifted after the two met. That was when President Kenyatta met with Raila Odinga. A picture of them talking together, smiling. But the two were soon at loggerheads again and the protests were back on. I estimate that these protests are costing $5 million a day. On Monday, Bharat Shah, who runs a Nairobi curio shop, held up a pad of paper with the number 360 scribbled on it, meaning less than $4. That's what I've sold today, 1 packet of beads. Just as in 2007-2008, business leaders have been discreetly meeting with government and opposition leaders, urging them to compromise for the sake of the economy. I said among international investors there remains a strong commitment to Kenya as a gateway to this region. That hasn't been shaken yet, but surely it will be shaken if this malarkey continues. Put up another photograph of protesters burning tires. Nairobi all share down 1.28% so far this year. NSE 20 down 5.93% so far this year. I&M Holdings is acquiring Gyro Bank. The link for that announcement is on Rich Wrap-Ups. They're basically paying a cash consideration of 2.5 billion shillings and an additional 21.043 million shares, putting the value at the size of the deal at 5 billion. Gyro is ranked 27 out of 43 banks. Made a profit of $4.5 million last year. If you're interested in the share price data of INM, that is up there on the website. Yesterday, we saw a little bit of pickup in action. Friday's employment numbers out of the US were poor and was the catalyst for a risk-on rally. We saw some positive spillover to Nairobi. Nairobi all-share firm 0.35 points. Safaricom was up 1.179%. I've been saying for a while it's been oversold, overdue a rebound. KCB up 0.67%, up 6.38%. That's down 5.88% so far this year, what is quite a poor performance. Don't really know why. Barclays, even worse really. Barclays, that's down 27.57%. Difficult to work out why. BAT was up very strongly, up 4.685%. Heavy duty volume up 8.15% year to date. It's all about its high and handsome dividend. The interbank, for example, is at its lowest in 5 years, 2.3%. And therefore dividend paying stocks are looking very attractive. And finally, Kengen unchanged at 680 and above the rights issue price. So that's one positive development coming out of that. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful.